Okay, so let's talk about lecture 2 in this one. In this lecture, we're going to talk about doing different sections. We're also going to take a look at some dimensioning and how to do dimensioning. And we're going to also learn a new thing that they added in this version of AutoCAD, which are the center lines. Okay, let's first talk about sections. And as you're going to see, usually most people will use sections to show the internal features of a drawing. So depending on what you're trying to dimension or trying to get to, it's one of those rules that is kind of illegal to dimension to hidden lines. So you always want to figure a way out to show what's on the inside of something, and you're going to wind up using a section. There's going to be all types that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the full, half, offset, aligned, the revolved, removed, and broken out. So we're going to take a look at each one of these sections and see exactly how you're going to use them to kind of benefit you. All right, so starting with the full section, I know it says a full section, but you're actually cutting the object right in half. So if you're looking at this demo right here, you can see that at this model, you can see that on this model, let me go back one. On this model, we have it totally whole, and what we want to do is cut it in half, and we're showing all the internal features, so now I can dimension to this. Another thing that you will see is that sometimes people will cut a full section that's not going through any other parts, and that's nothing more than showing a view. It's a projection view of that right side, but it's shown as a view, and the benefit of doing this is so they don't have to line up. So if you put a view on something, you can put that view somewhere else. If you just do a projection off of an object, it has to be lined up next to it. So those are the two benefits of using a full section. Next one we're going to look at is the half section. So I know it's cutting an object in a quarter, but it's actually called a half section. So what we're revealing is half of this drawing, or half of our part that we have there, and the bottom half is still going to remain as if you're looking at it. So that's what you're seeing on these type of views. The offset is if you have something that has some holes or something drawn in a different location, you're going to see that most people will use a offset one just to capture all those holes. Now, one of the things about an offset section is, I know this zigzags through, and some of your 3D programs and other things will actually put another cut line going through these planes, but they are not shown when you're using an offset. The only thing that is showing is actually what you're going through and then what you're actually cutting through. No cutting lines, no any slices or things of that nature. So you're just seeing nothing more than in this case, a full section of what you're cutting through. The aligned section is one of those unique things that if you have a hole that's not in line with the other one, so I can't use a full section and I can't use a half section, what I want to do is use an aligned section. So what I'm doing is I'm basically cutting that object just like I'm going through both of those features, and I want to hit both of these holes in this case. And as you can see, the detail of that comes and you have two holes that you're showing here. And this is actually going to be the full size of this. So this is not obscured or anything. It's as if you rotated this down until it's in line with this and cut a full section. So these are one of the things you're gonna find that when you're using an aligned section is that you want to just trying to go and find or trying to get to an object that's not necessarily straight with it, but you have to use an angle at it. Otherwise, you're using an offset section. The remove section is one of these things that you just want to show people that you're talking about either pipe or something of that nature. So you want to show the detail or what is the actual component that you're having going through here. So as you can see that this is a pipe and this is a piece of square tubing. From the side they look exactly the same, but if you use a revolve section, you can see the contents. There's two different ways you can show these revolve sections. You can either show them inside the graphics, or you can break it and kind of show it as you're going through it. Both ways are acceptable. The remove section is almost like the revolve section, but it has one other aspect to it. So as you can see from this section AA is that it's an actual round piece, and if I cut through section BB, it's squared, and then back to C, it's a round piece. So it's doing the exact same thing as you're doing kind of with the revolved section from before, But this is actually removing it and actually making a detail of it. It's not left in the graphics or in line with the graphics. And if you wanted to see what that object is, and that's kind of what the other little 3D picture here is showing you. A broken out section is one of those sections, if you don't need to cut a section through the whole thing, you just want to make a curve through it and just pull out a portion of it. And that's what you're seeing on this one, is that we're just kind of removing a portion here. And now we can dimension this internal feature of here, or maybe we're trying to get to the center of something else. So it's not depicted by any of the section lines that we use in all the other sections. This is just nothing more than you just going ahead and making a spline or some kind of shape in it, and then removing that out. One of the things that I typically do when I use a breakout section is that you just can't break it out in the middle of an object, so you have to go from points on the edges of it just to reveal it, and then you put your hatch pattern on the inside. And with all those sections, once again, we're going to use the hatch pattern in this one. So the hatch is a real easy thing to do. The only stipulations that you're going to find is that you can't have any gaps when you use the hatch command. So it's going to be used to enclose that object, and as long as it has no gaps or anything in it, you'll have no problem using the hatch command. It will tell you sometimes if you do have a hatch, and it usually puts a round circle or something of that nature and lets you know where that problem is. Alright, now let's talk about dimensioning, which is probably going to be one of the most important things that you're going to do in this program, is going to be dimensioning things. The way we're going to wind up setting these things up, and I always use the D enter button to get to my dimension style, but in the demo videos I'll show you other ways of getting there. But the quickest way of doing it is obviously just D enter, and it'll get you to your dimensioning style. You have two types that's usually standard that when you open it, if you have never created one, you have a standard one and you have an annotative. We'll get into the annotative a little bit later, but for right now we're going to deal with the standard. And when we do that, we're going to go on the inside of it, and it's a bunch of tabs that we have that's going to control everything. For example, the first tab controls the lines, the second one is going to control your arrows, text. The most important one, in my opinion, is going to be the fourth tab, which is going to be the fit, and I'll tell you why. And then you got the primary units, alternate units, and tolerancing. And we're going to discuss tolerancing also a little bit later. But you have all these different options to control everything that you want about a dimension. When you're using different types of dimensions, you're going to have a linear dimension. You're going to have all these different lines, arc lengths, radiuses, and ordinate dimensions, and jog. And remember, all this stuff is going to be controlled inside of your dimensioning style. So you can select these dimensions, but if they're not appearing correctly, change your dimensioning style and get them to change correctly. Now, if you're only going to do it for one dimension, then I would suggest you create that and modify that in your properties. All right, here's some examples of two special type of dimensioning. What you're going to see is you're going to have a continuous dimensioning, and you're going to also have a baseline dimensioning. So you can see the difference between the two depending on how you want your dimensions to look. The baseline is going to be really, really accurate. So you're pulling it all from one point. So when someone is manufacturing or building what you want, they're going from one point. If you use the continuous one, if they kind of screw up on their first point, they can get you on the second point. The benefit of the continuous is, though, it takes up less space. The baseline dimensioning can take up a lot of space. The ordinate dimensioning is going to be a special type of dimensioning, and what it does is you can see it has no arrowheads, it has no extra lines to it. It's just a line pointing out to something and showing you exactly what a dimension of that is, going from the x-axis or the y-axis. With that, you're usually going to have to tell it a datum point or where you want this to start from, and then you're going to have your dimensions and leader lines. It's just that simple. But one thing we have to do is that we have to relocate the UCS, so we can get the dimensions to all pull from the same point. And when I show you in the ordinate dimensioning demo style, is that you'll notice that I have to move my UCS in order to get things to act correctly. They have two special dimensioning. Now the quick dimension has been around for a while. The newest one is going to be the dim one, the one that's on the right. The one that's on the right has a combination of every dimensioning style in it. So as you're going through, and you're going to see me use that one a lot more or less in most of my example videos. So I'm going to use that one to go ahead and set up my dimensioning. The quick one is also a good one, but you got to have some kind of particular rules and things you got to stay away from when you're using the quick dimensioning. But it does dimension quite quickly if you kind of be careful when you're setting up your dimensions. The one neat thing about here is the center lines and center marks that they've added in here. And I'm so happy that AutoCAD did add these in. They make life a little bit easier for me and you both. In previous versions, we had to draw these center lines in and do extensions and do all kinds of things and set them up. Well, now AutoCAD came out with these, and now all you have to do is say, hey, I want to put a center mark and pick on the circle that you want to put it on, or arc, and it puts it on there with no problem. And you can modify it and manipulate it. These two commands are going to be underneath the annotation tab. So annotate, and you go and look, and they should be somewhere in the middle of the ribbon, and you're going to see the center mark and the center line one. The center line one kind of works as a bisecting, but it also, if you have two center lines, you can pick the two endpoints, and it will put a center line between them. So it's going to work as both. And the center mark, you know what a center mark is. It just shows you where the center of a circle is. Here are some commands or some variables that's going to control it. One you're going to see me use quite a bit is going to be the center line one at the bottom. The center layer one. And that center layer one, what it does is it goes ahead and set your, anytime that you want to create a center mark or a center line, it puts it on the center layer. So as you can see in our title block, we made a whole bunch of different layers. And we could call up these layers by using the center layer and already have our center marks and center lines put on that. Some other things, if you don't like the length of it at the end of it, you got your center EXE, and that's another one that I probably commit to memory. The other ones typically are standard and set up right, and usually they're also based off of your dimensioning style. Here's a picture that's showing you exactly what I was talking about. So you can see that we have the center lines and the center marks, and you can see which ones they actually control on these drawings.